Today we are speaking with Shelly Dominguez-Lieder. She is the COO at Etched Communication. Shelly is a visionary leader and creative thinker who empowers teams, clients, and campaigns through her commitment, wisdom, and expertise. Testament to that, I've worked with Shelly. Shelly has developed high-performing teams for some of today's most innovative agencies and their incredible client rosters by fostering work environments that inspire creativity, innovation, and productivity. Her firm's clients have enjoyed the highest level of success. I'm honored to have you on today, Shelly. You've been a mentor and a friend in the short time that we've known each other. So welcome to the Activate Your Audience podcast.
Thank you, Luis. I'm happy to be here.
It is my pleasure. So why don't you, if you don't mind, give us the cliff notes of kind of how you landed, to your current COO role and what your career trajectory has been.
Absolutely. I'm extremely honored and blessed that at a young age, I knew what I wanted to do. Now, I didn't know how it would end up, but I knew, you know what, if there's something to be sold, if there's a way to present it, and if there's kind of a hustle in it, count me in. My grandmother sold Avon back in the day, so very much going door to door and making people feel good and expressing that. And I loved every minute of it. So that was kind of my inspiration. Went to school, studied marketing, and have never stopped. Um, Currently, my COO position, again, it's all about who you know and really building and nurturing those relationships. I'm completely just thrilled that I work with Tony Harrison and that I'm a partner with her in Etch Communications because that relationship has been built over time, over trust, over collaboration. And it's just someone that back in the day who would have known that this is where we'd be now.
Nice. I love that. Yeah, it's interesting to see how, with the sense of not only just, the hustle, right? And kind of like the
Mhm.
commitment and the work, because it always takes work, obviously, to do great things, but also this sort of human element that's been a through line through past episodes of just caring as much about
Mhm.
people as well as the craft, the industry, the end consumer. And so it definitely seemed like maybe that journey with, cultivating the relationships, obviously building your skill set has helped get you to this position. So, and what are maybe some key principles that you follow to foster positive and productive relationships with clients, executive leadership, and key stakeholders?
Absolutely. What I do is I have an acronym because that's just how I stay organized, and it's FACTS. So the first one for F is I'm fair. Be fair. That applies to all aspects, right? Whether you're looking to the team, to the budget, to the ask, but just coming in with this sense of fairness. There's always a misconception that agency life means that we wave magic wands and crazy things happen, but that's not always fair and it's not always accurate. So, first and foremost, we must be fair. The second one is be accountable. Do what you say you're going to do. Always respond. I have a golden rule. You never sign off without making sure you've answered every text, every phone call, every email, even if it's just a hey, received, I'll get back to you. And that just shows your team, your partners that, yeah, you've got their back. And then the third one's be credible. Don't speak about things you don't know about. And I've learned that throughout my career, having started off back in the day of like presenting true boards in meetings, like going to a printer, printing them and presenting them to the digital age we are now. Don't talk about things you don't know. It'll catch up with you. And then there goes that trust, right? And the last one is just be true. That's kind of that credibility one, right? Be true. Don't fake it. Make sure you know who's in your meetings. Make sure you understand who's sitting at the table with you, and just be honest.
Definitely something that's popped up for me lately is like the balance between both, credibility and maybe, the accountability aspect. So as we
Mhm.
delve into new worlds, right, the landscape is always changing. And as we evolve ourselves, there's this tension point between getting better, maybe within a area we don't know, an industry clients, maybe that have certain sort of models or needs that are new. How do you manage that tension between, being kind of aware of where maybe you need a little bit more of the learning time, but also of still having that sort of trust and maybe that evoking the competence as a team while, being fair with those kind of points, so how do you merge those two of being humble and say, I don't know this yet, and as you said, kind of being like if it takes work, if it's going to be something that is hustle, I can figure it out. But sometimes I think we either shy away from things or the fake it till you make it thing, with both extremes are wrong. So how do you balance that, if that makes sense?
Yeah, and that is such a good point and delicate balance because you want to show your confidence, you want to show that you've got it, and in your head and in reality, you just might not. So for me, it's the preparedness. So before, if it's a new client or a new industry, it's setting that time aside and doing the research, looking at what's being said about them online, going through their social channels, really diving into their digital assets, and from there usually it leads you down a rabbit hole of really education. Like you'll learn by just continuing to click and see and kind of soak it all in. I'll give an example. There was a client partner we had, who was launching new shows, new content to new audiences. So there wasn't a lot out there yet because it had never been done before. But instead of shying away from it or not preparing, the team and I went and figured out, okay, what else is similar? What else could lead up to in the realms of who are they looking to watch this? Let's see, what is that audience currently watching? And just paying attention to the chat rooms, to the comments, to things like that started to provide really rich learnings and inputs. So when we went to the meeting, even though we'd never seen the show before because it hadn't launched yet, we already had a sense of authenticity because we had dove pretty deep down the rabbit hole of who their audience was. So it's carving that time out and doing your best to be prepared.
Makes sense. Yeah, it definitely shows that one, you are also, a scrappy sort of group, right? And
Mm-hmm.
somebody that can, as oftentimes clients hire us to help them be able to be an extension of them. And so kind of
Mm-hmm.
showing this sort of, innovativeness as well as just the required commitment and interest seems to be reflective of that work.
100%. And not everyone's doing it is the crazy thing because it
Mm.
sounds easy enough and it sounds like it should be table stakes, but you'd be amazed at the amount of times, especially in these larger integrated agency models, where we'll show up. Nobody else has done it. They kind of take for granted that you, the client partner, will feed them their inputs. So it continues
Mhm.
to help my team stand out when we show up a little bit more prepared, a little bit more savvy on what's happening because we're that much more ready to have those deeper conversations in real time.
Yeah. Now, on to the next question. In your experience, what have been maybe some of, useful strategies that inspire this sort of innovation, creativity, or even productivity within the team or these projects?
So that has had to change, right? With COVID, definitely like had the record scratch of like, all right, what was working will
Yeah.
not work now. You're no longer in the same conference room. You're no longer in the same space with putting, the inspirational boards or, just even talking with each other. So I had to figure it out. And the first one was listening to my team. They had a lot of those answers, hearing them. What do you need? We've got this new project. What do you need from me as a lead, or what do you need from our client partner to get there? Oftentimes they know. So listening and trying to help champion and bringing that to fruition, whether it was getting a sample or a link to a certain asset that hasn't been disclosed yet, or, just figuring it out. So oftentimes just being that sounding board and kind of the bucket for the team to pour their needs into was the first one. The second one was just figuring out how to foster the chemistry because the chemistry shows up in the work every single time. So, not always making it about that specific ask, but how can I help y'all better get to know each other? How can I bring the agency culture to life? So definitely lots of back in the day, back during COVID Zoom parties, of course, wine tastings, things like that virtually to show and spend time with them. And then my mentor gave me a really good point, probably midway through COVID. And she said, it's okay to let them see you not be perfect because it allows your team to feel you're human, right? You're not always put together and you're able to be real. So I would try to go to different rooms within my house so they could see, she's in the kitchen. Kitchen's a mess. They're there, just real moments during brainstorming. So it didn't always feel like they were presenting to me or to one of the other partners of the agency. So breaking down the walls, so to speak. And then productivity, I highly believe that you have to model the behavior. It's not a do as I say and not as I do, it's do as I do. So I put together what the team called Shelly Boot Camp. And what that did was teach, what does a good account person look like? What are those expectations? How can I help you in a day prioritize your day and manage up in terms of what you think is due? How do we prioritize deliverables? How do we, kind of air traffic control your day? And that even means getting into some of the personal stuff. Does that mean, I know you didn't get a workout in, you feel like you're eating like crap, you're not sleeping well. And for my team to disclose that, because we were figuring out, all right, well, then let's carve 30 minutes a day where you can get out of the house, go walk, go pick up a smoothie, come back. And now you've checked 3 boxes for yourself for wellness, and you're a little bit better off that afternoon. So, and I'd have to model that. So me being able to log off and say, hey, I'm going to go grab lunch, or I'm going to go sit outside for 10 minutes, I'll be back. And really infusing that within our team structure and our daily practice.
Yeah, that's so interesting because it kind of parlays into what you were saying earlier with, kind of having this sort of I want to call it like humility, right? In terms of the balance of both, say,
Mm-hmm.
being a strong agency as well as being a strong leader and showing both the human side as well as like the leadership side, right? Like we think, in the old dynamic that a leader just had to be, strong and, lowercase stoic of just bland, no
Mm-hmm.
emotions. But as we know, like vulnerability, connection, and again, making sure that that's not this sort of reckless, like, emotional mess of things, right? Like not like you said, not being prepared and being overtly reliant on either the client. There's again a balance of having this sort of willingness to be human and to show that, but also the other side of acting in spite of, you may have a bad day, the agency may not know this thing, but we're going to be honest and we're going to show up to figure it out together as an individual. And even back to, kind of fostering this sort of the culture and the chemistry, it's becoming more clear, maybe because of, I don't know, the new generation, as you said, COVID, some within the sped up change within our industry, within the world, that if we invest in ourselves and in people, it's going to make the business better. It's going to make the end result better, the product, the consumer experience better. But it's still a thing that, especially if you have a large moving ship, like it's hard to steer and it's easier said than done. So, I love that point of it coming back to do as I do, because that is the way. Sometimes we overcomplicate, like, well, how do we change this? And it does take systems some time and processes and these sort of complex ways, but the simplest way is to embody that, which again is easier than trying to control a lot of things that are externally. But at the end of the day, if you're doing right by you and you know what works for you, that is easier to actually work and is truer to actually deliver results than you knowing these things, right? Because we see them, on LinkedIn posts or Instagram or whatever, and just spewing it without living it, right? So that approach of like being true to this work is obviously like a huge lever for making that change.
100%. And it goes back to that kind of notion of authenticity. So if I can be my authentic self to you, team, and hopefully you can back, and all the good and all the bad, right? And all the crazy. But that also translates to being authentic to our client partners. And
Mhm.
that shows up in the work every single time. And oftentimes that's the differentiating aspect that has work go from good to great, because it's authentic. It feels real. Your client partner knows what they're getting, who they're getting it from, and it comes and it shows within the team structure.
Course. Yeah, that makes total sense. Now, kind of shifting gears a little bit, going into sales, marketing, and maybe customer trends of the moment. Are there any within the landscape that are top of mind for you? Um, any insights that, have helped you as of recent, have contributed to the success of projects or teams?
Yes, absolutely. I have a few. The first one is don't give up, like that notion of keeping a pulse on the community.
Okay.
So really taking a moment, and it's work. So you have to carve it out to really make sure that you're enriched and surrounded by what's happening within the communities that you're marketing to.
Mhm.
So if you can't physically get out there, you have to find how to become a part of it. And so again, it goes back to that authenticity. So you're not evaluating things based on your gut, it's being evaluated based on knowledge because you've spent time in and around those communities. So I feel like that is a really big one in terms of really capturing the culture and understanding of what's happening with those audiences. The second one is a little personal, but it pays off professionally, is not to underestimate the power of Generation Alpha. Like they are, I mean, if just to sit and watch them, I have a 13-year-old daughter, and watching her consumption habits from a digital point, I mean, she grew up when iPads had already been launched. She thinks Alexa reads her stories. She wants the instant gratification of an ad, like a click. She wants to be able to purchase or have mom and dad purchase things within 2 clicks. Like they are at such a supersonic level of bringing in information and being able to act on it, that really paying attention to that, trying to start harnessing and getting ahead of it for when they're able to purchase things more freely, more independently, I think is going to be key. And they're also very globally minded because of how the information comes to them. She cares about what's happening in the world. She cares about brands that care about what's happening in the world and make her feel more knowledgeable. And so there's a lot of power, but a lot of learning with that generation. And then the last one is really don't be flashy. I think right now, the way that the marketplace has changed, it's not about who's doing it bigger, brighter, bolder. It's about who's doing it in a better way, a more succinct way. It doesn't always have to be this big, flashy mess of things. Sometimes it's as simple as just putting out a message, showing real people, and just using plain, normal jargon, and that's it. And so don't underestimate the power of simplicity.
Yeah. Simple scales, fancy fails is one of the sayings that I've tried to
Yeah.
live by recent. And to your point, like this, Generation Alpha, as you'll hear, whether it's because of the industry that we work in, really seeing like the contrast, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, of, the way that, as you said, the new generation is so much more global, but they're also a lot more conscious about things that they seem to, just like every generation probably sees as the norm because what they grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these things are in a good trend. And obviously, like say climate, awareness and the
Mm-hmm.
empathetic approach to, the needs of the world today, that I think they're very, powerfully attuned to grow into and to deliver that sort of demand for, which will obviously, influence how brands and our industry and marketing and advertisement will communicate to them. But it also sounds like, even pulling back on that, what you started off with is caring enough about who it is that you are serving to understand them. And, of course, it's a thing that seems like it should be the norm, but it's this one little thing that not a lot of people really value, that if you just lean on that a little bit, actually investing in the communities that you speak to, investing in the actual, what's in it for them, how do they see it, having them as stakeholders, being authentically curious, not judgmental, because that's, I think, the approach in the past to maybe shift, instead of like aligning with the needs of
Mm-hmm.
them. So yeah, that's definitely a good reminder to use something as simple as that curiosity and service to really be able to provide a better value. Now, as a leader, again, with working with different stakeholders, is there any sort of, I don't know, maybe recent examples or any best practices for how you merge, stakeholder, client, and team, alignment or values? Oftentimes, some of those can be in flux, especially as you mentioned, working with, across agency projects. What has been your experience or best practices for kind of aligning these sort of values and goals, both from a personal, a project, and the stakeholder level?
I think first and foremost is going back and just having that active listening. I mean, if you hear your team, you hear your stakeholders, the answers are usually there, but also it allows you to really understand any tension or pain points and try to get ahead of them. So, for example, if I'm listening to a team member and within their presentation they sound a bit tired and they sound fatigued, I can get ahead of it by scheduling a one-on-one to say what's going on, and me coming first versus them having to own it, feel a little, ick in it, helps, and you've then continued to nurture that relationship. On a business side, if a client just in conversation throws out, a concern like, we really missed the mark with this one audience, and maybe it'll be a goal for next year. I can mark it down. I can go talk to the team. I can jump ahead and be like, hey, client, we actually thought about that. This isn't fully fleshed out or anything, but here's a POV on that. They're like, dang, you just solved something I was pushing off. Cool. And it didn't have to be a big old PowerPoint deluxe presentation. But that kind of active listening helps you find those nuggets of where you can then come forth and provide value. And that is something I do teach my team, to be very good listeners. The second one is definitely having this industry discussion. So what I've learned is we all have meetings. It's like meetings on meetings. So how do we make those meetings become even more effective and efficient? So we set agendas for our internal meetings, which are very important. But within there, what I've done in the past, but really brought it back, is set up time for us to just talk about the industries we're working in and ask the team members to come prepared with that week, or, the past couple of weeks. Provide an article, provide a post, something that you see that you want to talk about, for good, for bad. It's kind of like that water cooler talk
Mm.
from back in the day, if you would be around there, but giving it as an assignment, because now the team has to go look. And again, right, you're going down that rabbit hole. So you're going to be getting learnings
Yeah.
besides the assignment. You're soaking it in. And what that's done is it's helped us, even at times of like awkward silence with client partners or with internal teams. You're now armed with all this information that you already shared in a safe team setting. So most often you'll hear kind of more of the junior team feel empowered to start speaking up in meetings because they're armed with info, things that they know what to talk about. And bonus, we all just raised our level of awareness within that industry, and it becomes much more timely. So I've brought that back, and I really feel that every time that's a part of our weekly meeting cadence, just enriches us that much more.
Yeah. That's definitely one of the things that within our busy world, and again juggling sort of different clients, different projects, we kind of slowly but surely have forgotten to have these touch point moments, that it sounds like integrating this as a, whether it's a checklist item or like an actual project in and of itself, it does bring us back to be aware of how do we, as a long-term play, say change things like climate change or help affect that, or toxicity and health, and awareness of just things that are going on, that because we're so hyper connected in other ways, this helps us really connect to the true essence of being in this world, being in this industry, being of humans. So I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna run it back and just kind of highlight what stood out for me. Let me know if I missed anything or if you'd want to add anything in.
Okay.
So the first one is your acronym FACT: fair, accountability, credibility, and true. And speaking to, being fair in how, you manage things, kind of having a sense of, I would call it like a justice, right? Of being authentic, but also just fair, of realistic in a way of expectations, also accountable in what you're going to say and do, making sure that that aligns. Credibility with, again, having this sort of trust that is based on true competence and just authenticity, honesty, and being true, again, kind of aligned to all of those two. The next point is preparedness comes through education. Which again, I tie it to almost this humility in terms of how we balance both being competent as well as honest when there's an opportunity to learn, and humility is key for that. And then listening, and that being a way to foster chemistry, both from different cultures, from understanding the landscape that you are serving, but really having this sort of curiosity, and whether it's to your people, to the people you're serving, this sort of superpower of listening sounds like it's been a huge leverage point, for your work. Next, productivity is a do as I do, not as I say. Simple, easier said than done, but as we said, if we keep it simple and just live by these things, even though it's not necessarily easy, it's simple, we can definitely have a bigger impact. And last, I really kind of see as being a scientist to what is going on, whether it's watching family members, a community you serve, you yourself and your interests, yourself and your pains, a community's pains or a community's, joy, being this sort of curious scientist that sees things maybe without judgment or as best as you can, and simultaneously translate that to back to listening what either the client or your team is saying in a meeting, and just really being curious about, as a scientist would, what are some of the facts, what are some of the information, because that is the way that we are empowered with knowledge, but more importantly, we're empowered to act on it. So is there anything you'd want to add, anything I missed?
No, I mean, that was perfect. But definitely, all of that being said, you have to make sure you take control of your day and stay organized. In this industry, if you aren't prepared for your day, the day's going to take you out. Like it will take you if you don't take it. So, all that can happen because you have to be very good with your time and you have to stay organized and you have to be able to prioritize effectively. And then your team will pick those habits up as well.
So true. It reminds me of that stand up that Adam Sandler did a while back where he's like, "Oh, I woke up at 4 in the morning, not because I wanted to be a productive person, but he goes through this thing like I couldn't go back to sleep." So he's like, "Oh, now I'm making breakfast. Like, look, is that the early bird?" And he's like, "It's now 10 a.m. and I'm making breakfast again because I have nothing to do." And he's like 11. He's like, "When's this day gonna end?" Right? And it's like a comical take
Yes.
to like, yeah, if you don't own your day, no matter what you're doing that is like of trend, then it's going to own
Yeah.
you, right? So it's making those days count because they do go by fast, right? We're at the end of the year,
Yeah.
our lives go by fast, projects go by fast. It's so cliche, but it's definitely one of those things that if we get a grasp on, it can help us personally as well as professionally. So I love that.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Shelly. Where can people learn more about you, the journey, anything you'd want to plug in, or Etched Communications, anything you guys have going on that you'd want people to know about?
Yeah, I think you can follow us on Edge Communications is on Instagram, and through there you'll also find a link to we craft a blog, a Medium blog, and so you'll see various team members talk about timely trends in public relations, crisis management, as well as just the overall community that we fostered at Edge.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Shelly. I look forward to our next connection, and I appreciate you for being an amazing leader. And we'll chat again soon.
Thank you. Sounds good. Thanks, Luis.